Hi, this is Dr. Michelle Robin with Small Changes, Big Shifts, Building Rhythm and Resilience. And I believe if you'll change one thing a month, one thing for the next 12 months, you'll change your life forever. Thanks for joining me on the journey. Welcome back to Small Changes, Big Shifts. Wow, are you having an interesting holiday season? I hope that you are reframing it and that you have the best one yet. Well, today joining me on Small Changes, Big Shifts, Building Rhythm and Resilience is Dr. Charlotte Markey. She's the author of this really cool book, The Body Image Book for Girls. She's a professor of psychology and founding director of the Health Services Center at Rutgers University. Dr. Markey has been involved in community efforts to educate parents and children about eating, body image, and health. She's been asked to present in school districts across the tri-state area and has served on task force charged with improving school nutrition programs. Dr. Charlotte, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And I love that you have a picture of your book, The Body Image Book for Girls, right behind you. It was such a fun read. It was definitely, I love the different questions and the art in it. So tell us a little bit about your story. Why are you fascinated with body image?
Well, I think my story begins when I was a kid, and like most of us, we're shaped to a certain extent by our early experiences. And I was a dancer. I danced at San Francisco Ballet, and I was very committed. And it's, a really body-focused environment to grow up in. Your body is your tool. And so I think all of that emphasis and the focus on weight was really instrumental in how I grew up thinking about these issues. And when I finally ended up going to college then, and I was studying psychology, I really found it just fascinating to start to intellectualize these issues and to sort of realize the extent to which they had weighed on me and the extent to which I think they weigh on most women, most people.
I heard this statement about 4 years ago from my friend Brooke Runyon, who's also in the body image space as a psychologist. I think what is the top concern between the ages of 10 and 94 is body image, either yourself, your kid, or your grandchildren. Does that sound, tell me when I say that to you, from your expertise, have you found that to be true?
Yeah, I mean, there was actually a study in the spring that came out. It was looking at young adults, and the researchers found that 40% of young adults would rather get COVID-19 than gain 25 pounds while they were sheltering in place. So this is in the early days of the pandemic, and a lot of people weren't leaving their homes. But I think that statistic from just months ago now is just sort of mind-blowing, right? This idea that our weight is so important to us that people would rather potentially contract a deadly illness than gain weight.
Wow, that's fascinating, isn't it? Well, I'm in the health and wellness space, much like you, and think about the body from this whole person health perspective: mechanical, chemical, energetical, psycho, spiritual. And I have this saying that if your body if you heal your heart, you will do what you need to do to take care of your body. When I say that to you from a psychology perspective, what comes up for you on that?
Yeah, I think that, people often feel like they need to fix themselves or fix their appearance in order to feel good about themselves. Mm-hmm. And in the body image area, what we often talk about is, no, you need to sort of work on the inside first, right? How you feel about yourself first, and then the health behaviors can follow much more easily. So I think it's kind of a parallel to your mantra, which is kind of work on the inner person, and that will help you physically.
On this show, we like to celebrate, guide, connect, which provide hope. And I'm celebrating your fabulous book. Just so you know, I get 3 or 4 books sent to me a week. I love how yours was easy, very intentional, and really, really great for girls to be able to get enamored by it and the information. So we're celebrating you. We're celebrating your book. And I want to kind of share some guide. I want you to share some guidance with us. So if you were talking to, one of your clients or one of your classes, what would be your top 3 non-negotiables with body image?
I mean, I think it does depend on if I'm talking to parents who are thinking about their kids or I'm talking to kids, but it's probably
parents first because I
I'll
want to
start with parents. Okay. Yeah, I think, there's a few things I usually tell parents. And one is we are the front lines as parents. So we need to model healthy behavior for our kids, that they see what we are doing, even if they pretend as they get older like they want nothing to do with us, as they do. And so we cannot, look in the mirror and lament how we feel about our bodies and weight, because then we teach our kids that that's what they should be doing. And that's the last thing we want them to be doing. We also need to be really careful in terms of how we talk, not just about ourselves, but to our kids. And it is hard, again, as they grow up, because they change so much, especially during puberty. And it's tempting to comment on all these changes all the time. I know I have 2 teenagers of my own. And, I have to bite my tongue all the time, even though I study these issues, right? Because I want to talk about sort of how fascinated I am by the way they're changing. And I mean it in a positive way, but I don't want it to passively be interpreted in a negative way. So you have to be just really careful. Usually it's better to say nothing about appearance, frankly, or to make sure that you're being really careful that you're talking in very positive and supportive ways. And we also really need to make sure, I think, that our kids appreciate that, how they look is not the most important thing about them. Right? We get so many cultural messages. They just come at us from every direction. And kids spend so much time on devices, especially lately. And they're on social media and they're getting these messages that how they look is the most important thing about them. And that's not true. And so we need to really, I think, work to counter that message. And we need to do it pretty explicitly as parents.
Maybe think of a couple things. There's just so many things running through my mind. I'm thinking about parents. I can go back as a little girl and I've battled my own. I would tell you, I don't think I've had an eating disorder, but my favorite subject is food. I always thought about when's my next meal and make sure I know. I'm always shocked that people don't bring lunch. I'm like, I would never, I do it, but I'm always thinking when I leave the house, okay, what am I going to have for lunch today? When I remember my mother said to me when I was little, I was skinny until I had you. And as an adult, I can see how I internalized that and how it was part of my food addiction. I feel pretty blessed that I've been able to stay on a side of it. I'm sure there's so many sides so many sides of food addiction and body image issues. Give us a little bit of a rundown of the different types. Then I want you to give me your top 3 things for if you're talking to your teenagers. So give me a rundown, kind of explain this whole, anorexia, bulimia, some of the different food things. I feel like I have a food addiction, but I'm managing it.
Yeah, I think, there's different data to suggest that, possibly a very high proportion of people have some kind of food, quote unquote, issue. So it really depends on how you're measuring, who you're studying, exactly what you're asking people. Because if you're looking at anorexia nervosa, which is for the most part a disorder of restriction, then most research will suggest that it's like 1% to 2% at most of the population is really going to meet the criteria for anorexia, which, and those criteria are pretty intense. It's severe weight loss, usually for girls and women, amenorrhea or loss of menstrual cycle, right? So there are things that they're pretty high, a pretty sort of high standard. But, bulimia is usually a disorder of purging. So individuals will eat, but then try to either overexercise or, sort of the after school special version of bulimia is vomiting to compensate for eating. But oftentimes now it really does come in the form of overexercise or even diuretics or laxative abuse, things like that. So other forms of purging. Binge eating disorder is actually the most common eating disorder. And so that's the binging without necessarily compensatory behaviors, without the purging component of it. And then there's sort of a fourth category, according to the psychological diagnostic code, which is kind of people who don't fit the other categories. And when you start including that fourth category, that's where you start to realize just how many people have a maladaptive relationship with food and how serious and problematic this can be. So even though anorexia, for example, may be fairly rare, eating disorders are the deadliest psychiatric illness with about a 10% fatality rate. So, if we're concerned that a child is on this path, or an adolescent, or an adult, anyone, of course, but if you as a parent are concerned, then, you don't want to just sort of wait and see if they outgrow it, right? That the chronic nature of these disorders and the seriousness of them really means that you need professional help.
So many questions to go here. So let's go to the kids. So
Yeah.
talking to teenagers.
Yeah.
Who are still, developing their brain and their whole systems of how to have rational thinking. What would you share with them?
Yeah, when I talk with teenagers, I like to focus a lot on media literacy and why a lot of what they see in the media is not real, right? So I'll talk about everything from how photos are manipulated, and I show them videos of that sometimes to really exemplify, like, this is what a real person looks like. This is what that real person looks like by the time you see him or her in an advertisement. And also, I really like to spend a lot of time on just, well, why does your appearance even matter, right? And how can we be more accepting of diversity in terms of how people look? So not just weight issues per se, but just, this starts to really become a social justice issue. How can we treat everyone fairly regardless of how they appear? And so I think it's really fun to kind of move in that slightly more philosophical direction. And young people are very receptive to that the younger generation right now is just so much fun to talk about. I feel like they're so much smarter than we were as kids, that they just have access to, I think, more information. And so when you sort of get a little bit philosophical and ask them questions, well, why does it matter? Or, do you think that makes that person lesser in any way? They're usually just really amazing. They're like, no, of course not. Then why would you behave any differently towards that person? And it can be a really fun conversation to have. And they teach me a lot too, because when I talk to preteens and teenagers, I think just their youthful sort of acceptance in some ways can be really inspiring.
I'm thinking some people have had the COVID experience where Netflix has taken off, and watching The Crown season 4. I'm not sure if you've seen that. Have you seen Crown season 4?
I have not yet, but it's on my list.
Okay, well, it's disturbing, and I think I must have had my head in the sand about Princess Diana having bulimia, and you just you think you could stereotype it, but it could just be anybody. It's kind of like the thoughts of anxiety, depression, and suicide ideation. It doesn't affect just one economic; it's across the whole economic social spectrum.
Yeah, and I'm actually working on the body image book for boys right now, and I've been interviewing different people just to get some quotes. And as you mentioned with the girls' book, there's a lot of components. So it's not just text. There's stories and Q&As and some quotes and things like that. And I was talking with an Olympian, actually, on the phone, and we were talking about body image because I had seen online, he's a swimmer. He had been, made some comments about being insecure about his body. Growing up, he's in his 20s now. And so I was asking him about this, and he said, since the Olympics, I've been able to meet all kinds of people, celebrities, famous people, other athletes, and everyone's insecure about something. It's like, it's amazing because, I felt that way. I assumed it was just me, but it's really like everyone has, I think, a little bit of this burden.
How do you get a teenager to really believe that? Because I do believe that everybody has insecurities.
Yeah. I think, the more you say it, the more they get it. you know, that this is just, one, it doesn't matter as much as sort of the media would lead you to believe, right? The people who really love you and care about you, like if you change your hair color or something, they don't care, right? It's something we've been joking about actually a lot in my house because no one's had a normal haircut in forever. So my son's hair in particular is really doing something crazy, but I always tease him that, you know, I love you anyways, but do you want me to try to cut that? Like, so I think that, you know, impressing upon people that like, this isn't what you value them for does make a difference, but we just need to get that message out there more because there are so many insidious messages about the importance of changing our appearance. And it's all marketing because these are all products that we can buy, right? There's weight loss plans, which are going to just go crazy end of December, early January, trying to market themselves to us, cosmetics, clothes, everything. And I'm not saying that we should refuse to indulge in any of that. That's not, you know, caring about how you look is fine. But caring about it more than other things that really are more important is not fine.
You know, I agree with you. I think about how do I tune in? So how do I feel? You know, my
Yeah.
definition of well-being is when your mind, body, and spirit don't get in your way of living life. So a bellyache, a headache, a back pain, or you're so worried about the future that you can't be present today. So for me, I think, how do I dial in? And if I don't feel present and energetic like I'm designed to be, how do I shift that? So let me shift my question just a minute. I'm going to go to your girls' book. I'm going to come to your boys' book. When you were researching, and what was one of your biggest surprises on your book about the body image book for girls?
I think I was surprised when I was talking to girls. I think how complex their ideas about body image issues, even as young as 13 or 14. I was surprised, you know, I've been studying body image as a psychology researcher for over 20 years. So it's not like this was just the first time I decided to talk to girls about these issues, but this was a more sort of in-depth process, a more qualitative process than a lot of the quantitative research I've done across my career. And so to sort of get that nuance and the complexity and to see the extent to which young people have really thought about some of this. And, you know, some of the stories in the book that I share are from real girls I talked with. And I just found it really fascinating sort of to follow their thought processes, you know, like I used to think this, or I used to worry about this, and then I had this epiphany, or it just, I was really moved by that. And I hope other people are too.
You know, I'm curious, could there be a clue younger, you know, when there's like a 3 to 5-year-old, or are there some little signs to watch for at that age as a parent?
Yeah, I mean, the first study I ever published 20 years ago now was an examination of 5-year-old girls' weight concerns. And they were mostly predicted by mothers' weight concerns. So if mothers were concerned about their weight, then their kids were. I'm pretty sure what was going on in that data was that kids were mimicking what they saw around them. Right. I don't think that most 5-year-olds who would say that they were worried about gaining weight were truly worried or sort of had the cognitive complexity to really understand that question and answer it the way an adult does. But they certainly can mimic people around them. And so that's part of what we saw. And so this is where I think, again, being a good example for young people is really important, and not talking about these issues in a negative way, and not making food a negative in our lives is really important. But certainly when kids are, you know, even preschool or early elementary school ages, and they're saying like, I'm fat, or I don't like my legs, or I don't like my stomach, these are red flags to jump on. And to say, why would you say that? Or did someone say something? And to start then having more explicit conversation about, you know, this is who you are, and I love you for who you are, and taking care of your health is most important. And, to really sort of get them off that track of ruminating about those thoughts that really take up a lot of mental space for a lot of adults.
Well, one reason we have partnered with Community America Credit Union, it's a bank, but they look at the whole person financially, but they also do a lot of stuff around educating kids about stress and college and thinking about careers and purpose. And so I want to give them a shout out and thank them for all the work they're doing with young people to help inspire them to be more whole.
Wealth to me is big family vacations.
Houses, cars.
Money, mostly, yeah.
Am I wealthy? No, I wouldn't call myself wealthy.
Didn't have a lot of money, never really had a lot of money.
Med school certainly isn't cheap.
How'd you get this picture?
This is Molly. It started pouring down rain, and we hid under the tree.
I wake up in the morning and I see her smile, and I know she's the love of my life. I think of her nonstop. She's just totally unbelievable. I wasn't expecting this.
Come on. It means she loves me.
Am I a wealthy guy?
Absolutely. I may not have financial riches, but
I am wealthy.
And so as we're going into this holiday season, I'm curious, what advice would you give us? And we're going to start being bombarded with all the ads about this gym and this supplement and all that stuff. I get bombarded with it. And I'm like, oh, do the basics. I just kind of stick with the basics day after day. I do. What recommendations would you give to our audience today?
Well, I think really importantly, realize that most of the information you're being bombarded with, it's diet culture. Right? So it's people trying to cash in on your insecurities. And even if you see it and it's marketed as a juice cleanse or a reset or other languages used, this is all diet culture cashing in on your insecurities. So the language has changed, right? As people have come to appreciate that diets really don't work. And a lot of superficial changes to our appearance don't make us psychologically happier necessarily. Then the language changes, right? Now it's a reset, it's a detox, it's a cleanse. And those things are still part of the same brand, essentially. And so you don't want to, I think, fall for that marketing.
It's interesting. I just got an email from one of my friends in California. I'm in Kansas City saying, I want to do a cleanse. I want to do a reset. What should I do? And so here's some of my thoughts is I believe that we use the word detox a lot. And what if we plan out when we're going to tox out? So what in my world, what I try to do is I try to eat clean 80 to 90% of the time. So, lots of vegetables, a little bit of fruit, nuts and seeds, good fats. I'm not a vegan, so I'll do some lean meats. I eat potatoes. But then I really try to think about, you know what? It is Christmas Day or it is my birthday and I want to have chocolate cake or whatever the case may be, or an alcohol drink. So I think about when I'm going to tox out instead of the 20% of the time of trying to eat clean. And as you say, detox or reset or cleanse, it's like, okay, can I just plan the other way around? So that way it kind of flips for me. As a health and wellness person, I get asked that question a lot. And I do think people need to be mindful about what they're putting in this vehicle. Mm-hmm. Not only what they're saying to themselves, which I want to come to with in just a second, but also what they're putting in their body, because I think it can create dis-ease. What are your thoughts when I say that to you? Because I'm actually now getting free consulting. How do I talk to my young people who are having anxiety and having digestive issues when I want to be able to say, you know what, that could be related to you, eating just bread. You know what I mean? How do I talk to them without pushing them into a body image issue?
Well, I mean, food is fuel, right? Food is important. Mm-hmm. So we should be mindful about what we're eating. But we also should really work towards being intuitive eaters. So really not being too bound to food rules that pop up in our culture, I think is important. And what's really problematic, especially for young people, I think, is if they feel like they can't have that birthday treat or whatever, because nothing makes you want that treat more than feeling like you can't have it, right? So we don't want to make food forbidden. We want people to appreciate that eating well, you're going to feel better. You're going to feel better psychologically, you're going to feel better physically, right? But I think sometimes people kind of almost have to learn the hard way. They have to kind of work through this on their own, because if we're really heavy-handed about it or really push quote unquote rules, that can really backfire. And so, we don't need to detox. We have organs that do that. We have kidneys. But I do appreciate why people get that sense, especially after the holidays, right? I mean, many of us will eat too many Christmas cookies or big meals or too much alcohol. And I totally see where people are coming from when they think like, okay, I need kind of like a start over, right? But you can do that without just then drinking juice for a week, right? Because then once you stop drinking juice for a week, you're just going to eat how you were before, and the cycle will repeat itself. So I think how I do it, if I feel like, oh, we've been getting a lot of takeout this week, it's been a stressful week or whatever, we just make a plan. Then sometimes you have to think about it a little bit in advance, and okay, let's have a good salad for dinner tomorrow night. Or, what can we make for breakfast and maybe freeze so that we have it for a few days? So just kind of put a little more energy into making some foods that maybe are a little bit lighter, will make you feel a little bit better. But it doesn't mean, you have to just sort of cut out all solid foods.
Right. Exactly. I'm going to bring our additional guest in right now with me. Let me just switch you here. Hello. Hi,
Hello.
Nathan.
Dr. Robin, how are you tonight? Dr. Markey, good to see you.
Yes.
I wanted to pull you into this conversation as we take a turn here. So Nathan Harrup serves as Regional Director of Clinical Mission Integration for AdventHealth in MidAmerica. His role is centered on promoting whole person care and physician well-being through AdventHealth's network of outpatient clinics. He's a frequent writer and speaker on topics related to organizational health and workplace culture. Nathan, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
I had you peering in on our conversation for a little bit, and speaking of thinking about whole person health, what's your take on this whole body image for boys, girls, men, women?
So I only caught up the last few minutes of this conversation, but it is a question that hits close to home because I have 2 teenage boys myself. And I think that there is more comparison right now in our culture than I ever experienced when I was a teenager, just due to social media, due to media in general. And I can't imagine trying to navigate this and be 15, 16, 17 years old and try to figure out what is the ideal body. What is it I need to look like to be accepted? That's a very challenging question.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, because Dr. Charlotte is working on a new book for boys. So what is some of the research you've seen around boys? You talked about interviewing the Olympic swimmer. Any ahas that you were like, whoa?
Yeah, I think with boys, what's interesting is when I try to talk with them about body image, they often think initially, like, this topic isn't for me. Why are you talking to me about this, right? Because it's a topic we've basically feminized culturally. And then they'll transition into how they don't eat carbs, or they go to the gym twice a day, or their concerns about social media. So they don't have the same language, it seems, that girls often do, are talking about and thinking about these issues, or they don't want to admit it maybe because these are women issues. And so they think it doesn't pertain to them. And yet it clearly does. And another thing that's very interesting, I think, and different about boys versus girls is that oftentimes their concerns end up couched in terms of like, I'm going to get healthier. I'm going to get more muscles. I'm going to get, and so not that girls don't do that also, of course they do, but sometimes girls I think are a little bit more clear-headed that like they want to lose weight, right? Whereas boys, it's usually not about losing weight. And so it doesn't seem to be a superficial or a physical kind of concern as much as like, I'm getting healthy. And I've even seen this with parents where they say like, well, my son wants to start lifting weights because he's really interested in playing basketball, or, he's really interested in becoming an athlete. And so that's why at 9, we're buying him a weight set. Right. But, really, if it's extreme, it's really not healthy.
Yeah, it's that pendulum back and forth. Nathan, I'm going to come to you and talk a little bit about your role for AdventHealth and talk about whole person health and what that means to you and your AdventHealth colleagues.
Sure. Well, as you know, we are a faith-based organization, but the general idea is we believe in treating people in body, mind, and spirit. And what that means is we take a little bit of a different angle when it comes to evaluating the health of our patients. And not only that, but we expand that to taking into account how healthy our providers are, how healthy are their teams. So this is a philosophy and a culture that extends all throughout the organization. I think in 2020, this has especially taken on significance because as Dr. Markey would know, there's already so much burnout among healthcare providers. And we know that the rates of anxiety and depression and divorce and in some cases suicide are actually higher among physicians than they are among the general population. And that's a tragedy. But in 2020, the problem is even more exacerbated because of all these unknowns that surround those issues. So part of my role is in making sure that, especially in the outpatient network, which tends to be kind of an island separated from our central campuses, that there is this sense of you're being cared for. We see you, we hear you, we know that you're suffering and we don't want you to suffer in silence. And we want to make sure you have the resources that it takes to pull through this.
I think that ties right into you, Dr. Markey. We see you just as you are. We love you just as you are, and we appreciate you. Speaking of appreciation, Nathan, part of my focus has been this month is gratitude. And
yes.
How do we share gratitude? How do we feel gratitude? Who is our teacher for gratitude? So I'm going to ask you the question first, and Dr. Markey, I'm going to come to you right after that. So Nathan, when you think about the word gratitude, okay, instead of asking you what does it mean to you, I wanted you to tell me a story of under the age of 25 where you experienced gratitude or you witnessed gratitude.
Under the age of 25, well, you're sending me back quite a ways. I would say the problem with that question for me is that my understanding of gratitude has evolved. But when I was a kid, we were taught to say thank you all the time. And so I got into the habit of saying thank you as often as I could. But it wasn't until I was a young adult serving in one of my first, what I would call career positions, that I decided to send a thank you note to the director of the organization I was working for. And really, it was just an on-the-spot decision. But I just wanted to express my thanks for all of the opportunities that I had to serve and for the clients and everything else. A few weeks later, this director reached out to me and just wanted to talk about how much that moved her. That it was so rare for her to get thank you cards from employees, even from the leaders under her. And I think I realized at that moment, this is not just an impactful thing. This is a transformative thing. That gratitude actually helps us swap out a lens for people and put a different lens in. And so I've tried to carry that forward through all of the positions I've held since then. And I know I still miss a lot of opportunities, but I do recognize now the importance of it.
We're going into 2021 and people are, the word I hear a lot, fatigued. And as we shift that, so Charlotte, Dr. Charlotte, the question to you is, we're in 2021, we're heading into it very, very fast, and people have some fatigue. How does gratitude help them shift that from a psychological perspective?
Well, I think, we've heard some of this across 2020, where people will say, like, this has been a really difficult year, it's been a challenging year, but I'm grateful that I've had more time with my family, right? Um, so I think a lot of it is just in how do we frame these experiences? And gratitude has been shown to be a very excellent tool for improving our mental health and also for improving our body image. So I think focusing on the things that we are happy about and grateful for and conveying that to people is a really important tool, especially, as you say, with the fatigue many of us are feeling right now. And if we need a reset in the new year, a gratitude reset might be a much more adaptive approach, right? To make a resolution to say thank you to people still, right? To send a short email or even a text message. And I agree with Nathan. I think that those sorts of exchanges can be really transformative. And as a teacher myself, I've gotten a few of those this semester, students who are struggling during this time. And it probably takes 5 minutes on their part, but it really keeps me going then across the whole semester. Those moments of feeling like, no, people are noticing, people are grateful.
If I could just piggyback on what Dr. Markey said a moment ago, I think the other thing about 2020 that has to be brought to the forefront is gratitude is part of an ecosystem of emotions. So when we think of it as, well, this is the preeminent emotion, and if you feel this, then you can't possibly feel other things, we miss the mark. The fact is, healthy adults feel a lot of different things, sometimes at the same time, especially at the bookends of life, at the funerals and at the births of children, we feel all of these different emotions. So in 2020, what I have taken to telling people is give yourself permission to feel the sadness with the gratitude or the frustration with the gratitude, because it's not that you're confused. That's a healthy approach to your emotional ecosystem.
The words I are reframe, regain, sustain. So how do we reframe it, regain, and sustain our just well-being, our mental well-being, our physical, our spiritual, our mechanical, chemical. So as we start to wrap up this show, I've got some questions I love to ask people. And Nathan, thanks again to you and the team at AdventHealth for answering small changes, big shifts, building rhythm and resilience. So I'm curious, what's your medicine for the world? Do you know?
Which one of us are you addressing?
I'm sorry, Nathan, I'm looking at you. You can't tell I'm looking at you.
No, I can't. What is my medicine for the world?
Mm-hmm. I believe that. I believe that. Something's to share.
This is an important question, actually, because I think one of the things there's not nearly enough of is the discussion of the importance of acceptance. And acceptance has a deep philosophical tradition. It has a tradition in psychotherapy. It is becoming something we talk about more in our modern discourse. But acceptance is just the idea that we really don't have control over most of the things that happen to us in life. And so to not accept is to eventually slip into despair. But on the other hand, that acceptance has to be coupled with hope. Hope is what keeps us from slipping into a sense of fatalism or even nihilism. So when we can keep acceptance and hope coupled to each other and live through that framework, I think there's a chance that we can get through almost anything that comes. So my medicine for the world would be accept, but never lose hope, because there is always the possibility that tomorrow, no matter how bad today is, tomorrow could be the best day of your life.
I think about that could be the best day of your life or the next moment. I got a new sign this last week from a friend that said, "Thank God for this moment."
That's beautiful.
Charlotte, same question to you. What's your medicine for the world?
Well, that's a tough act to follow. I thought Nathan articulated that really nicely. And so much of what I've been trying to do in writing these books for kids is really try to teach acceptance as well. And I would maybe extend that to say also appreciation. because I think that we have so few cultural messages that are directed at young people these days that they should both appreciate and accept themselves and other people. And that I think is just really, really critical for young people to grow up feeling good about themselves means also being compassionate towards other people.
Dr. Robin, could we turn the question around and ask you, what's your medicine for the world?
Well, I think my medicine's connection is I love to collect people, so I'm collecting new people today. Thank you for being part of my people collector. I've enjoyed our conversation, but and then trying to find resources. I get anywhere from 3 to 10 asks a day for, do you know a chiropractor? Do you know a psychotherapist? Do you know a nutritionist? So I would say that's probably my medicine is, and you know what? I try to respond to everybody that reaches out to me. Some days it's daunting because I have to do a little research to find people in other parts of the country. So, but that's it. Nathan, no one's ever asked me that. Thank you so much for turning that around.
Well, thank you for answering.
So I'm curious, if you had a magic wand going into 2021, Dr. Charlotte, I'm coming to you first. What would you do?
What would I do going into 2021? Oh, that's a tough one. But I do think that continuing some of the lessons of gratitude and, as we've been saying, appreciation and acceptance. And I think, something that's happened across the pandemic for some people is an appreciation of maybe living a little bit more simply. And I think there's some value in that. You can't race around all the time doing a million things because that's not an option. You kind of catch your breath. And so I think that that's a positive. And we want people to go into 2021 with hope. And I think even maybe the expectation that the pandemic will end and life will return to normal in most ways across the year, except we can be better people, right? So even though we want to get back to quote unquote normal, I think all of us have been changed by living through this experience, and we sort of have a choice. Will we be changed for the better, or will we just go back to whatever habits we had before, even if they weren't serving us well?
I think that's a good time as we go into this year to reflect on what some of the gifts have been. One of my gifts has been reframing, and I love this word. And when I start to think about tomorrow too much, I'll say, Michelle, are you okay in this moment? And it brings me back to that moment. So what's been one of your gifts, Nathan, from COVID?
Gifts from COVID. Wow. I have learned to keep my dreams local. I still have a few big dreams, a few global dreams, but one of the things about being told to stay at home is you have to localize those dreams a little bit, and you have to find ways to find the same intrinsic payoff that you would have had from doing the big things. You have to find that in the little things. So I've tried to focus in 2020 with all the limits placed on life. I've tried to focus on how can I continue to live a meaningful life, even though the doors and the windows have been shut all around me. And I know that doesn't sound like a gift, but I feel like that's something that will bear fruit in the future too. God forbid there will be another pandemic, but this won't be the last time our society faces a struggle like this. And so resilience is one of the gifts that I think this year is giving not only me, but probably giving a lot of other people too.
I love that. I feel like we're seeds for what's next for things. I've got 2 final questions. Charlotte, I'm coming to you first. Is there anything that I've not asked you that you want to share today?
I always feel like I should have a really profound answer when people ask me that question. And I don't, because I think that we don't necessarily need to be profound to feel good about ourselves, to be good to other people, and to just get up and keep trying our best. And in some ways, that's been a lesson from the pandemic as well, I think. It feels like Groundhog Day sometimes, where you just keep getting up and kind of doing the same thing, but you still have a choice to make. to try to do the best you can do with the circumstances that you've been given.
Nathan?
I think my thoughts would be very similar, actually, to what you and Dr. Markey just shared. A lot of getting through this is about aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life and realizing that there's only so much we can fight against. So I'm trying not to live too far in the future, and I would encourage anyone who's going through this right now to try not to live too far in the future. We will get through this. We know this season will end. It's just a question of when and how. But in the meantime, let's not miss what's happening in the present that could actually be of value to us. That would be where I would start.
Great wisdom. Last question for you. I'm a bit of a quote nerd. Are there any quotes that I'm coming to you first, Dr. Markey, any quotes that kind of help you move through, and you knew that was going to be a question for you. So any quotes that come to mind that you'd like to share?
I didn't know that was going to be a question. But I've actually been, looking up quotes right now for this next book project. And there's a William James quote that I'm using in the boys' book. And it's basically, let me see if I can do it from memory. Act as if what you do makes a difference because it does.
Yeah. That's
right. And I actually have a magnet on my fridge that says it. So you think I would have it more committed to memory than I do. But I like to look at that because I do think it's easy to forget that, sometimes the little things do make a real big difference to other people.
I'm glad you brought that up. We did a kindness campaign back in October, November with our friends over at Lockton. And it's still going on and people are still doing it. Some companies are starting at January 1st. So it's not too late. It's a free campaign. It shows you how the little things every day matter. And if you need some help trying to get through January, I would encourage you to sign up. It's right at the bottom here, smallchangesbigshifts.com/kindness, 31 days of focusing outside of yourself and actually focusing on yourself as well. Nathan, how about you? I bet you have a quote or two that you'd like to share with us today.
Sure. Well, the first one that came to mind was, I think, an Einstein quote where he said, there are two ways to live life. One is as if everything is a miracle, and the other is as if nothing is a miracle. I found that interesting in perspective. But the other is a Tolstoy quote. He said, there is a tiny and brilliant light that burns in the heart of every man that will not go out, no matter how dark the world becomes. And I'm not sure he was talking about gratitude, but he might as well have been. And I would be curious, Dr. Robin, for you to answer that same question. What is a quote that you would leave us with?
Well, I've got one. And I do before I start the show, I want to say thank you for joining us today. We will be continuing to share a message of hope and healing. And thanks to our partners, AdventHealth and MidAmerica, for helping us share this message. And so here's my quote for all of you. And thank you to our guests today, Nathan and Dr. Markey, for joining us. Nobody can go back and start a new beginning, but everyone can start today and make a new end. And that is by Maria Robinson. So, hey, as we start 2021, create the life that you dream of. And that's probably just being present in the moment and enjoying each day. So blessings to all of you, and we'll be seeing you in 2021.
Thank you for your time. It's nice to meet both of you. Have a great evening.
I sure appreciate you listening to Small Changes, Big Shifts. If you go to the website, smallchangesbigshifts.com, we'll have the show notes ready for you there. If this episode inspired you to make a small change that will lead to a big shift, please share with a friend. You can catch our episode on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and our website. And if you feel like it, please leave a rating or a comment. Be sure to subscribe so you can catch our episode next week. Blessings to you.